Ferguson, I lost my pencil.
I'm gonna sit right here. Okay, is that okay?
Oh, you can rock the end of my table. I'll move everything for you. Oh, I knocked down my pen.
Okay. Is this us then? Okay. So what I want to talk about today is mistakes. The mistakes that we make, we as modern armorers. You know, when I say we, do I include me? Well, I hope not, but I do, you know, because we all make these mistakes to some degree or another, or we all have made these mistakes. But to some extent, they're going to be mistakes that, you know, that I see other people make, and, you know, I've gotten past them, or they're new mistakes, some of them. So what makes a thing a mistake? Let's like come down to why I'm calling these things mistakes. I'm calling it a mistake if it doesn't look like real armor. That may be a little precious of me, but that's where I'm coming from, and that's our definition today. A thing which makes a piece of equipment not look like a real armor is a mistake. So why do we make these mistakes? What are the causes of them? Well, the primary cause of making these sorts of mistakes is not seeing. We don't see. We look, but we don't see. This is going to get a little weird, right? We're going to talk about brain hemispheres for a minute. Folks familiar with brain hemispheres? Who's heard of the left and right brain hemisphere thing? Yeah. So, but it's true. It sounds like woo-woo stuff, but it really is true. The left hemisphere of your brain is where logic and language and symbols and math and all that lives. The right half is where the shapes live. Other shit lives there too, but the shapes live there. And when we're building armor, we need to engage that right hemisphere. We need to like. Because no, we need to understand the right hemisphere, because we are going to engage that right hemisphere. That the understanding in the right hemisphere is what is going to flow out through your hands. Now, it's going to be colored by what the left hemisphere browbeats it into thinking. You know, when we say things like, "I'm going to make a globos," well, now we put a word on it. You know, and a word has a symbol, and that symbol can be a little overblown. So, brain hemispheres. In a sense, brain hemispheres, whether or not which of these hemispheres we use most determines to some extent whether we're an artist or a nerd. That's a pretty broad thing, but there's two kinds of people, the kind who divide people into two kinds of people and the kind who don't. But if we're going to be the first kind that divides people into two kinds, we got nerds and we got artists. And the artist is living in his right hemisphere. Ugo's living in his right hemisphere. Can you do math, Ugo?
No.
No, he can't do math. You know, but you see what he does. You see what flows out of his hands. He's a right hemisphere guy. The right hemisphere is probably where the Zen state is. You know, when you're in the Zen state, in the zone, and you're driving and you react, and everything comes out fine. That's right. That's your right brain doing it. You know, when you describe it later, it's your left brain talking about what they saw. So one of the reasons we have trouble with this is we tend to let the left hemisphere browbeat the right hemisphere. We tend to think of things in terms of their names, their numbers, their symbols. Oops, you're shedding money. And that can be a problem. We tend to have symbolic thinking. Rather than seeing the thing as it really is, we see it as a symbol. This is that thing that makes kids with with their watercolors, whatever, draw a picture and the clouds are blue and the seagulls are little M shapes and the chimney sticks out at the same angle as the roof. That's symbolic thinking. That's because that's the left brain's idea about what those things are supposed to look like, rather than the right brain's idea about what they do look like. The result is a lot of times a kind of a caricature. You know, we make a thing which has the describable features of the object in question, but it really isn't the object in question. But they would describe the same. They would sound the same in a police lineup. You know, brass borders, black finish, bassinet. You know, it's like the black sails thing.
From India.
You've seen the black sails thing, you know, where the guy's trying to like push a painting that looks like a kid's drawing as a real thing, and he looks and he says, plants, tits, fruit, it's fucking same thing. You know, he's left brain thinking, and the other guy saying, no, it may look the same. Well, it describes the same, and we have to avoid that. We have to avoid this symbolic understanding, and and have a kind of a real understanding. There's kind of two ways these caricatures can end up. We can end up with things which are overdone, and we can end up with things which are underdone. In the underdone category, we have vambraces that are just a tube. You know, we have bassinets which are just a point. We have great helms which are, you know, kind of round from the top. The overdone category, we get the globose breastplate, usually known as the globose with no breastplate. God save us, a globose chest piece. We don't want to say breast, right? And the things are like huge like this, or the Popeye vambraces. You know, well, we know that vambraces got curves, but we've let our brain say, oh, it has curves. And then somehow they become, woo, curves. They become crazy curves. And we'll show you a Popeye vambrace in a bit. But the result is this gets us back to, the black sails thing, exactly like. The left brain says the thing is exactly like that when it has the same characteristics, and we shout down the right brain. Okay, so that's enough of brain hemispheres, except to say that we can't just do one or the other. We have to let both of them play the game. We have to integrate the two. I find it very useful, for example, when I'm looking at something, to look at it as right-brained as I can, and then let my brains, let my left brain ask it questions. Where is the biggest part of the curvature? Where are the inflection points where it goes from convex to concave? How high is that up from the bottom? And then I sort of have a dialogue with myself, and I talk side of the brain to side of the brain, and I mean, I act as though I can like switch them on and off, but in some sense you can't. That moment when you're driving down the road and all hell breaks loose, and in your mind that scene plays out in 12 seconds, but in fact it was 2. This is the right brain doing its thing, and later you describe it, it's the left brain doing its thing. But we can engage that. We can do that, and artists do it all the time. They just if they think about it at all, they say, "Oh, that's just the way I think when I do art." But you can, when you become aware of it, you can actually sort of feel yourself switch from one to the other. You can feel like, your eyes just don't focus on something; they just take in the whole scene, and you see it for what it is. It's the Zen seeing thing. So, what do we do? Should we be artists or nerds? Well, we have to be both of those things. We have to use numbers, we have to talk about it, and I think it's good to talk about what's actually going on and what we're seeing, but we have to actually see it and not just look at it and think we're seeing it. So, how do we combat this? Well, another problem is lack of planning. In addition to not really seeing, we don't plan our projects. We say, okay, I'm going to make a bassinet. But what do? We make the bassinet that's in our head, which is sometimes a symbolic bassinet, not a real bassinet. We don't start with looking at a real thing. My lesson plan here is a little bizarre, and I figured I'd just wing it, but I have the word ignorance written here. We got to look at real armor. We got to look at real armor. We can't look at somebody's pictures of armor. We can't look at the Osprey books. God save us from the Osprey books. I gave all my Osprey books away. We can't look at the Osprey books and think we're actually learning something, because all we're seeing is through somebody's eyes, out through their pencil or pen or watercolors, and pen and watercolor wash. We have to look at the real deal. Well, there are lots of ways to look at the real deal. Wade brought up some of his real deal, and we got a chance to look at it earlier. And, that's very useful. You can go to a museum and look at the real deal. You can look at pictures of the real deal. And, back in the day, when I was your age, young man, when I was a kid, just learning this, in college, there was nothing for me but pictures. I got a lot of information out of pictures. With very little, exposure to real armor, I just read the pictures until I understood them. I looked at the pictures until I understood where that picture was taken from with respect to the object. Is it high? Is it low? Is the camera close or far away? You read the shadows, you see what's actually happening, which is a mixture of the right and left brain activity. The left brain is saying, okay, the camera is close. The right brain is saying, right, I think I see what this is. But looking at pictures is valuable, but you have to work at it. There's a lot of information in a picture, but you have to actually work to extract that information. You have to think about it and look at it and really see it and think about it and question yourself and keep coming back to it. But even if we can't You know, even if we can't like manhandle Wade's collection, even if we can't get to a museum, we still have pictures, and all the pictures on the web. My God, there's no excuse for not looking at pictures. There's a lot of good information on the web these days. It's astonishing. It's like, okay, well, we're seeing it through their eyes, right? So we're seeing some of their exaggerations and so forth, but they're their exaggerations. It's like, you know, if you were thinking about what fashion was like in the 1960s, and you look at the Peter Max posters, you know what it was supposed to look like, but never quite did. But that's valuable, you know, with the bell bottoms out to Yar and all that. So look at the real you look at pictures of the real objects taken by people who were real, or made by people who were really there, and try and understand what it was they were seeing, and what it was they wanted us to see, or what they wanted, you know, their contemporaries to see, but we're kind of distant from it, and we have to work a little at it. The thing we don't want to do is what I said before, to look at the Osprey books. We don't want to look at the Osprey books. We don't want to look at what people in our tribe are doing. You know, whatever our tribe is. If our tribe be the SCA, if our tribe be the Battle of the Nations guys, whatever it is they're doing, we don't want to look at that. We want to look at the real thing. Because these, as I say, these tribes, they're very different. You know, we can all look at an armor across the field and say, that's a Scadian armor. That's a European reenactor. That's a Battle of the Nations guy. You can just tell. And they're all wrong to various degrees. The European reenactor is probably the closest, but he's got wrong shit too. They're all wrong. Don't look at them. I mean, for inspiration, yeah, that's nice, but look at the real deal. Yeah, so modern Pinterest boards. We all look at Pinterest, right? Yeah, boo, boo, Pinterest. They're full of people who've got boards with names like medieval armor, and some of them have like pictures of real stuff, and some of them have pictures of their friends and so forth. I don't even, when I'm deciding who to follow, if I look at their page and I see, you know, 100 pictures of real armor and 1 picture of a reenactor, I might follow him. If I see 100 pictures of real armor and 200 pictures of reenactors, I dismiss them with prejudice. You know, get it out of my face. I'm not even going to look at this. If this guy shows up again, I'm not even going to look. You know, because he's doing the wrong thing. I don't care what else he sees. I got too much stuff. You know, I don't have enough time to follow him. So we don't want to do what other people have done. And okay, flavors of different groups. Since we got sketching, we need to sketch. This is part of planning a project. We need to sketch things out. You know, and I probably should have brought my sketchbooks down for this. I figured I'd bring them down for the thing that Wade and I are supposed to do, which is show and tell. But I've got some sketchbooks up in the truck, and if anybody's interested, I'll bring them out. And if not, we'll look at them on Monday. Yeah.
I'll offer you an anecdote. You, a long time
Please,
ago,
sir, an anecdote.
told me that the best thing I could do was to draw myself in the armor full size, draw the armor on the body, draw and draw and draw and draw.
Yeah.
And it has been the most informative, best thing that I have taken away from this. That was 7 years ago, and from then to now, before then I really couldn't make armor, and now I feel like I have gotten it. It's the best advice you could possibly give.
I got a question. What's your Pinterest?
What is it?
Is it just your name, or is it?
My name is, I think it might say Robert McPherson, it might say Max Shop.
You can search your name.
Okay, search my name.
You can find it.
If somebody here can find me, you know, give them the link. I mean, I've got hundreds of boards,
Hundreds.
and that's not counting the hidden boards that I don't want anybody to see with names like, does this armor make me look fat? Does this armor make my head look small? Or Arm Street, you're drunk, go home. I don't want anybody to see those. Those are hidden boards. But yeah, no reconstructions, except for the Arm Street board. No reconstruction stuff. I just got pictures of real stuff because like that's the only thing worth looking at.
Max Shop.
Max Shop.
Max Shop.
underscore shop.
Is it Max?
Max_shop.
Ah, Max Shop. Max with an underscore.
Is there an apostrophe?
Nope.
No, MACS underscore shop.
Underscore shop.
Yeah. You'll notice it as soon as you find it. Because you're like, how can I not know all this shit?
A wealth of diverse crap. So yeah, drawing. We got to draw. And you might say, oh, you know, I can't draw. I just can't draw. Well, you know,
What size you better?
you got to just do it anyway. I can't draw. I don't draw well. I force myself to draw. I'm better at it than I used to be, but I'm you know, my drawings are artistically garbage, but they work, they get better all the time, and it's important to do it. It's important to do it for a number of reasons. One is just the physical planning of the project idea. Two, as I was saying, you have a preconception about what, say, a bassinet looks like. It's in your head somewhere, and you think you know. You ask yourself, do I know what a bassinet looks like? And you say, well, of course I know what a bassinet looks like. It's a pointy helmet, and it looks like, well, it's a pointy helmet. And if you draw it, you might find that you draw some stupid-looking pointy helmet. And then you ask yourself, well, is that what it really looks like? Okay, no, but the important thing is that thing that you drew, even though you say, well, I can't draw and I know it's just a pointy helmet, that thing, that stupid pointy helmet that you drew, that is what you will make. When you look at somebody's sketchbook and somebody's work, you can see they are the same thing, you know, whether it be good or bad. The mistakes they make in their sketchbook are the mistakes they make on the real thing. Their high points in their sketchbook are the high points of the real thing. That sketchbook and that real thing, you know, they're a three-dimensional object. They both flow out of their hands, and the only way to tell what's really in your head is to let that flow out of your hands. Yeah.
Have you stumbled onto the actual documents of correspondence between prominent Renaissance artists and armorers?
No, I haven't.
Tobias Campbell mentions it, but I couldn't find the actual documents anywhere available.
No. That's sort of, you know, that's outside of my bailiwick. It's more like Toby's bailiwick, and you know, maybe even more like some of the other guys. I mean, if you got in contact with Toby and asked him, he would either tell you, you know, where it is or whether he knew or who would know. And he's a good guy. It may take a while to get an answer, but you'll get an answer eventually.
It seems to have to do with the cultural background of Europe, where armorers, at least during the Renaissance, tended to be more educated than, let's say, swordsmiths.
Well, yeah. I mean, they were a higher class of craftsmen than a lot. You know, their daughters married the goldsmiths. You know, they were sort of circulating in a slightly higher, snootier piece of society than the guy who made barrels. So I can't draw, but you can draw. You really can. Force yourself to do it. It's valuable. Even if it hurts, it's valuable. Just like calm yourself, have a drink, whatever it takes. Sketch. There's a book, Betty Edwards, Drawing on the Right Side of Your Brain. Should be required reading for every craftsperson. I mean, she's interested in the question of learning to draw, but it's applicable in whenever she says draw, like make that in your head be make armor, you know, because it's the same. It's all the same. You know, it's the thing that flows out of your hands one way or another. But it's you know, it should be required reading. Yes, you look like.
I have a short anecdote.
Yes, a short anecdote, please.
Actually, it's a number of years ago now. I don't know exactly when. I used to do shitty armor. Seriously, I still do, but it was worse. And I didn't know better, and I started talking to Mac, actually on the Armor Archive, and I got the tip to read this book that it mentions. And I read that book, and it seriously took me from drawing like a school kid, because I stopped drawing in school, I never continued, to actually be able to make decent sketches of things in a couple of days. Seriously. And she mentions it in the book that to just write to draw what you see. It's not to be an artist to draw something from your mind. It's just drawing what you see, and that's an easy skill that anyone can learn. And once you learn it, it's like riding a bike. When you know it, you know it. And I think doing that and learning this skill made me be able to see armor for what it is, and not for what I think it was.
I remember the thread on the Armor Archive. You said, "Oh, I can't draw," and then in a bit you're like showing a picture of your hand and a gauntlet. Well, fuck, you can draw. This isn't bad.
And it seriously, it was days practicing and reading. It's weird.
So
do it.
So draw things. It lets you know what's in your head. It lets you fix what's in your head. If you look at your drawing and you say, "Well, my bassinet looks like a cone head," okay, now you can fix that. Now you can draw it again until it doesn't look like a cone head. Compare it to the picture. See what the differences are. You know, you get to examine what's in your head and change what's in your head. And once you've got it firmly in your head, that's closer to what's going to flow out your hands when you have a hammer. So that's the important thing about that. Critical evaluation. Yeah, we get some other things, but critical. I touched on that before about looking at your pictures and making sure that that everything's right. You need to evaluate your pictures. You need to evaluate your work. You need to really step back and evaluate your work. I mean, yeah, you have pride of creation. You've done this. It's your baby, but you got to step back and say, well, what's wrong with that? What is wrong with this object I've made? And don't even start with the question, is this good? Start with the question, what did I do wrong? Assume you did something, because you did. I mean, we all do something wrong. And if you can't find very much, you're either not looking hard or it's pretty good. But ask, what did I do wrong? How does this not look like this picture? Well, my bassinet looks like a pinhead. Okay, then you have to do something about it. You have to fix the one you're working on, or scrap it out and start a new one. But one way or another, you've now made a kind of a life change. You've seen the thing you've done wrong. You know what you have to do to fix it. You might not know how to get to that fix, but you know where the fix has to take you. But critical evaluation, but it's hard to do critical evaluation. It hurts. We don't want to examine our failures, but we have to examine our failures. And if we can't examine our failures, we got to get somebody we trust to examine our failures. Somebody who can do well and say, what have I done wrong with this? And if we can't find somebody who we trust to examine our failures, just start asking people who don't know anything about it. Say, look, this is a picture of what I'm trying to do. This is what I've done. What do you think? Or no, better yet, not what do you think? What did I do wrong? If you say, what do you think? They'll say, oh, it's great, pat you on the back. Say, what did I do wrong? And they'll look at it and say, well, this is kind of skinny at the top, and yours, and the one in the picture is wider at the top. Okay, so now, what Albert Dürer termed the meanest man on the street has told you the most glaring error in your work, and it's time to deal with it. So here's the one. Here's the one that I'm not sure quite how to deal with: the Dunning-Kruger effect. Yeah, this is kind of a tough one, and it is that those of us who have the least competence think we're the most awesome. I mean, research shows, and I don't know how to deal with that. I mean, to some extent, I think it can be worked on, but I don't know how to work on it. But it is a thing we have to be aware of, that we might think we're awesome when in fact we are not. So that's a kind of a problem, and that's a thing we see in people's work, that they think they're awesome, and no, they're really just not awesome, but they don't test drivers. It's just the way the world is. It's the way human beings work. I wish I had a good idea about how to deal with that. I've got a kind of a list here of things that modern armor. I mean, that's enough theory for the moment. Things modern armorers get wrong, and in general, we get things that are, like, as I say, too overdone or too underdone, too curvy or too flat. But I'm going to start with a. I'm going to start with a kind of a start from the top. Start with helmets, and talk about some common problems. I'm going to run down this list of common problems, and then I've got some pictures that I just pulled down off of the web. And typical helmet. I mean, the most extreme example of the perfect axis of symmetry is the Morian, right? It fits on either way, except if it didn't have cheek pieces, and when most of them don't anymore, either way will fit just fine. But even other helmets typically have an axis that comes from somewhere here to somewhere here, and they're very nearly symmetrical from here to here before they start doing something different. So the mistake you might make is to make that bassinet with its point back here somewhere, and it doesn't look like the real ones anymore because the point's back too far. Which we've done because we're copying our friends who are doing it that way because they don't want to have anything tall on their head because they're playing a game with rules and blah 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 blah. And we've all come to see that as somehow the real thing. Helmets are frequently too short. Reproduction helmets. There's one I don't have here, but I hesitate to criticize Jeff Wasson because he's an excellent armorer, but he's got that I guess the second decade of the 16th century armor that he built for fellow, and every time I look at it, oh, the helmet is 3/4 of an inch too short. No, it just kills me, it kills me. So, no one's immune from this, but it's very easy to make helmets that are too short. As I was saying, we make these sports helmets and we don't want target above our heads, but you look at a real bassinet and there's room for your lunch up there, man. It's a tall helmet. But we tend to make helmets too short, or if we do make them the right height, we set them down too low on the head. You know, a real bassinet seldom covers your jawline. You know, they frequently stop at the earlobes and then run to your mustache. But because of rules and what we see, we tend to make them sit down low, and it makes among other things, it makes the aventail sit flat on our shoulders rather than sloping down like it does in the pictures. But these are things we do. I alluded earlier to the cone-headed bassinet. The widest part on your head is an inch above your ears. You know, that's where your skull is the widest. That's where your helmet must be at least the widest. I mean, you must have at least as much padding here as you have anywhere else, and really there should be more, because that's the place where people strike you. That's the place where shock waves travel through most of your brain. You know, that's the important place. But when we're making a helmet, that's the hardest place to get volume. When you're raising, you skimp out, you don't make it deep enough. You know, whatever, you know, if you're sinking, you don't want to go deeper because it'll get thin. But that's the place we skimp, right where we need it the most. So pin-headed helmets is a mistake we make. Helmets with sad eyes. You know, the drooping bassinet eyes. That's the worst, and that's partly because we think it's like going to go around the cone. But of course, it doesn't go around the cone. It should end up horizontal or very nearly horizontal when the helmet is in the correct wearing position. Too low on the head, I mentioned. Too long in the face, and I'm looking at you, Griffin Helm. You know, these helmets that come down to our nipples. What is with that? Why do we do that? I don't even know, but we do it. Not enough vervels. You know, bassinets that have like a dozen vervels. I mean, come on. Real ones have 35 to 40. You know, and they don't stop here. They run up to the eyebrows practically.
May I get your laptop that you're about to go on?
No, it will start.
Yeah, yeah,
we'll start.
yeah. You need to when we get there. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. No, we're good. Thanks. Helmets that sit at the wrong angle. That's that axis of symmetry issue to some extent. You know, we tend to, let's say we make a thing which looks like a real bassinet in all ways, but we tend to think they got to like wear it like too far back like this and too far down in the head to bring the eyes in the right place. Oh, and incidentally, that makes the eyes go sad to some extent. But that's a mistake to make. Oversized helmets, we've all seen those, and that speaks for itself, doesn't it? Oversized helms is another one. You know, the great helm that's like hugely oversized because somebody's decided they have to put it on over a pointed bassinet. A pointed bassinet has no business under a great helm. If you're going to wear a bassinet under a great helm, it should be a round bassinet. If there's any point at all, it's only kind of the suggestion of a point, like an egg might have a suggestion of a point. You know, but a pointy full-size bassinet, it just makes you have a great helm that looks like it belongs on a much larger person. Onto the cuirass. Waists too low. We've all seen these waists that are too low. They're sitting down on our hips on a thing that shouldn't be. It makes the torso look long and dumpy, and it makes the armor not look like a real armor. Waist too loose. That's part and parcel to waist too low. It can't be one without the other. You know, if it's tight enough to be a cuirass waist, you can't force it down over your hips. If you can force it down over your hips, it's too loose. But we see this. The waist rising up in the front. I talked about this in the cuirass lecture. Real armor, the waist is dead horizontal or dipping somewhat in front. It never, and I never say never, but for all intents and purposes, it never rises up in the front. But it's easy to make that mistake because, you know, one, when we look at the photograph of the armor, we don't consider the camera angle, and we read that waist in a different way than it truly is. We don't see it dipping down. We see it as like level or rising. And then we put that armor on a paunchy fellow like myself, and it pushes the stomach out, and suddenly the thing which on a skinny guy would be okay, on the fat guy suddenly the waist rises up, and this looks awful. And this is so common. We're going to have a lot of those in the. I mean, this is like almost everybody does it wrong, and it's you know, once you see it, you can't unsee it, and we can get on with like fixing it. Breastplate too narrow between the arms. The wife beater t-shirt breastplate that's cut away like this because they haven't made it sit correctly, and they think they have to do things in their armor that nobody ever did in armor before. You know, this is one of those. Now, you know, is that a mistake? Yes, by the definition I started with, which is that a mistake is to make armor that doesn't look like real armor, yeah, that's a mistake. You know, you might say, oh, but to play my game, okay, we'll go play your game. Don't call it armor, call it sports equipment. Breast too curved in the upper chest. I had somebody showing me armor earlier. Yeah, you still got it here?
Yeah.
I'll just show you what I mean by that. I mean, this is it's too curved across here. I got all sorts of room here, and it's sitting on my moving parts. It's sitting on my clavicles. This is a very common mistake, and you can fix this by just putting it in a vise and bending it to get the right shape, practically. But that's one that you see. Thanks. I'm sorry to single you out. But that's one that you see all the time, and it's about misconceptions we have about how the armor fits. And you know, once you start seeing it, you go, well, there it is again, there it is again, there it is again, and you know, it's about, in part because we think of an armor as being globose, and it has to be globose everywhere, and we make it stick away from the body too much here, and the result is it has to contact the body here where the arms move, and that, you know, that restricts our movement. It bruises us. It could even break our clavicles, although probably it just bruises us. Upper back plate's too narrow. This is a thing I covered in the class lecture. We tend to like make the back plate as an opposite of the breastplate. And if the breastplate is this narrow, the back plate is as if our arms went back that way. But of course, our arms don't go back that way. Our back plate can be extremely wide. It can be, if our breastplate can be 10 inches wide, our back plate can be 12, maybe 13 inches wide, and it still doesn't impede our motion. And to do otherwise, just it looks bad, and our pauldrons fall in. You know, but somehow we have this symbolic idea in our head that the body is symmetrical like Gumby, or you know, some you know, or like one of those wooden articulated artist models where the arms are like sort of in the middle of this distance. Let's see, upper back, sides of the breastplate too flat. We very frequently make the sides of the breastplate be basically flat, but they've usually got some degree. I mean, they've always got some degree of curve, and they're frequently quite curved. You know, at a minimum, they have to be, you know, sort of as curved as the rib cage is curved to look right, and to make them flat, you know, just doesn't. Except for a couple of styles, you know, the 1540s Triple-Brust, or whatever it is style. Yet they sometimes have kind of a square sides, but they're not perfectly flat. Arms. Here's one. The cannon's too big in diameter. You know, how much armor? You know, how much bigger does the armor have to be than my arm? Well, not much, but frequently we see people who make a vambrace which is, you know, an inch wider than your arm would be, and so big at the wrist that you can pull your hand out without opening it. Real vambraces are pretty snug fitting. Pardon me?
That's a feature.
That's a feature. Yes, that's right. That's a feature. They're snug fitting, and you know, we look at the stuff like the 14th century. Yeah.
Isn't that an issue of the gambesons that we're trying to make?
It sure is. It sure is. You get extra points, sir. Yeah, that's because we try to put them over these overstuffed gambesons, which look like the Michelin Man before we put our armor on. Yeah, it's not necessary. Your arming garment shouldn't be any heavier than a sweatshirt. You know, and if it is, you need to find a new arming garment or somebody who's competent to make one. Now, I'm not saying that's easy. There aren't enough seamstresses and tailors who can do that. We need more of those. In the meantime, the overstuffed arming garment just it precipitates an oversized armor. We can't be the right size in our armor if our arming garments are too big. It just can't happen. There are ramifications to this too, right? So let's say that my vambrace and my rear brace fit kind of like a skin. They're pretty close. If I'm going to move my arm a reasonable distance, and this is basically the amount that a real arm moves. It gets to your shoulder. You can reach your mouth. You can pick your nose, but you can't reach this buckle. If we're going to go here, if it fits like a skin, I have to have it open from here to here. But that's kind of the minimum gap that has to be open to the enemy. If I have an oversized thing, if the plates are bigger and farther from my skeleton, that suddenly becomes a thing which has to be from here to here. or alternatively, if I think I have to bend my arm like this, no matter what I've got, suddenly it has to be hugely open, and it looks bad. It doesn't look like the real thing. So yeah, elbow openings too big. Knee and elbow wings on stalks. Do you know the ones I mean? Instead of instead of the knee cup just spreading immediately into a wing, it goes out past the lame
and narrows and yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know where this, I know where it got started. It was like Polydor's Armour Manual in 1970 something. But somehow we haven't shaken it, and people are still making those, and I don't know why. But we need to avoid them. That's the important thing. The legs, cuisses that are too short. How tall should your cuisse be? Well, real cuisses come up kind of to the groin. That 14th century cuisse comes up almost to here, and is kind of almost level across. Those Gothic legs, how many times have we seen the modern Gothic leg and all those lames come up to like here? No, those lames should come up nearly to your iliac crest. And the cuisse plate alone should come to the groin before it starts to sweep into this sort of attached tacit thing. But it's easy to see that as too short, and it's easy to be frightened of the idea that we've got a big piece of steel like right up against the boys, but that's what we have to have, and to have it cut away like this just delays the inevitable. Yeah, we're going to get pinched. We just get pinched at a different place.
When you don't have it over mail, it pinches like crazy.
Hey, don't have it over mail, and it's even. This impinges on like the sporting aspect of it, but they pinch less if you're not wearing the cup.
Right.
The cup makes the thing worse.
Yes.
Well, you want it high enough to cover the femoral artery.
Yeah, right. The cuisse has to cover. I have to cover the vital organs. Yeah, well, that's the femoral arteries. Okay. We're not talking about the organs of gendering here. We're talking about the femoral arteries. Legs. Cuisses too big in diameter. It's easy to make cuisses that are just too big, and they flop around and look like the Tin Man. And part of that is this thing where, and this is a Skagen thing, where people want to fight with, from their knees, squatting like toads, which makes the leg crazy wide at the knee, which makes the knee have to be crazy wide, which makes everything look like hell, and they rattle around and look like crap. But that's a thing we see. Greaves with their insteps too abrupt. Okay, we look at the leg, and where should we start swinging? Where should we start swinging this out to get to the instep? Well, it starts swinging out up here. It doesn't go down to here and then turn out abruptly. That just bruises the tendons of the instep. It has to swing away and have clearance, enough clearance to do this, starting from up here. Well, but we don't see it that way. We look and we see it as a thing that swings out, but we sort of don't see how far up it starts swinging out. Are they harder to make that way? A little bit, but not that much harder. But yet we do it wrong. Greaves that are too wide at the foot. Well, how wide does a greave have to be? Well, you think, okay, well, I got to be able to move my foot like this, right? Well, look at the real greave. The real greave comes down, and there's barely any space between the greave and the sabaton. And there's no space between the sabaton and the shoe. And there's no space between the shoe and the foot. So basically, the sabaton is only a quarter of an inch bigger than the foot, and the greave has only got 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch on either side of that. There's not much room, but we think we have to do all like this, and we give it this big bell-shaped room. Well, the fact of the matter is, the real ones, they hug the foot because they don't make the ankle as narrow, and the whole damn greave just flops back and forth when the foot moves. But we miss that biomechanical point as a mechanical point, and we see what we think we see, and we make our greaves too wide at the ankle. Failure to account for the angle of the foot vis-a-vis the center line. This is a tricky one. Human feet don't stick out at the same. This is covered with pitch or something. All right, so this is the angle my knees just like fall at, but my feet are sticking out a couple of degrees, and everybody's feet stick out a couple of degrees. Anywhere from like this to like this is kind of normal. But if your greave assumes this, and your feet are really this, it will not be comfortable. And that's a mistake we make a lot. And It's one of the things that makes greaves hard to make because we think of them as symmetrical tubes, but the anatomy is not symmetrical. The feet have this tibial rotation thing. They call it rotation because they think of it as a developmental thing. When we're babies, our feet are like this, and then the tibia actually rotates in the first few months or a couple of years of life to where our feet are sticking out slightly. So the anatomists call it tibial rotation, although there's no actual rotation. It's rotation over time. But failure to account for that makes a greave which is uncomfortable. It sits on our insteps. It looks bad. But we all have done it and continue to do it because it's a thing we don't see, and it's hard to do otherwise. Shapeless symmetrical sabbatons that look like sow bugs. We've all made those. You know, hopefully we've only made one pair, but realistically we probably made more. The foot has a lot of shape, and it's not easy shape to work with. You know, it's real easy to think it's symmetrical. Of course, it's not symmetrical. It's really a very weird and asymmetrical shape. They're just plain hard to get right, but they look so much better when they are. One of the reasons we fail to get them right is we want to put them over inappropriate footwear. You know, we want to put them over sneakers, or worse, we want to put them over boots. You know, how many times have you seen sabbatons that are supposed to fit over combat boots? You know, what can possibly look worse? Well, lots of things can look worse, I suppose, but you know, nothing can look good about a greave that fits over a combat boot, or a sabbaton that fits over a combat boot and the greave that goes with it. Let's not forget. And also that makes them oversized in addition to being kind of shapeless. Now we come to the delicate question of mail. Mail is an issue. Back when I was learning to build armor, well, no, actually, I say I'm always learning to build armor. Back when I was beginning to make armor, mail was almost out of the question, you know. But now we can get it from India in a huge quantities at cheap prices, but it's not tailored well. You know, the elbows don't work, the shoulders don't work, the skirts are too tight, and this is an issue, and it's a hard issue to deal with. You know, you can take that Indian mail and you can retailor it, but it's an awful pain in the butt, and you have to know what you're doing. So I don't have a good answer for this one, but I see it when it's wrong. You know, I didn't say I had answers to all these. I just said I'm going to point them out and bitch about them. You know, I mean, yes, there are ways to get around it, but they're not easy. You know, you have to know something about mail, and you have to be willing to just like take the stuff apart and rework it. But things that we see are no mail at the armpits, which of course no right-thinking medieval man at arms would go out without mail in his armpits. You know, it'd be crazy. I mean, yeah, sometimes you see it, but 9 times out of 10, there's mail in the armpits. Insufficient mail at the groin. You know, who goes out there without at least a male skirt? You know, if not like some kind of, habergeon with a flap that comes up through the groin, protecting the vitals, which is to say the femoral arteries, you know, the lower abdomen and femoral arteries. I mean, yeah, are they worried about their organs of gendering? Sure, but they're worried about their lower abdomen, they're worried about their upper legs. You know, these are lethal targets. You know, you cut a femoral artery, you bleed to death in minutes. You know, you get a stab to the lower abdomen, you die in a week or so. You know, it ain't nice. So, what's that? They get to call your family for the death, yeah. So these are the vital targets. We should have mail there. You know, they had mail there, we should have mail there. Again, it's hard to get the right stuff, but we should have it. The skirt too tight. A lot of the skirts that we can get from the Indian makers, they flare out, but they don't flare out enough. And you see guys, and they got a skirt, but you see the mail is tight in front. You can just see the mesh is tight, and you know they can't move. They can't move without like the skirt rocking up. There should be enough flare in that skirt that the legs have free play. You know, you should be able to lift this leg all the way up to the stirrup of your horse without taxing the mail. You should be able to sit a saddle without taxing the mail. The mail shouldn't have to rock up when you sit a saddle. But it's hard to get that. We're not able to just get that. So that's one of the places we have trouble. Aventails that are too long. You know, the average aventail stops here, but yet the average reenactor or skater wears an aventail down to here. Why is that? Part of it is that they got the length right, but the helmet's too low. But part of it is they got some crazy idea about wanting to cover their shoulders with mail, and that doesn't seem to be the way you did it.
They also come that long.
And they come that long, yeah, and they're not flared enough. But gauntlets. There's not as much that's sort of flat out wrong about gauntlets that I can point to. We see oversized gauntlets, It's easy to make gauntlets that are oversized. We see gauntlets that are too deep, especially in the fingers, and part of this is like, you know, these rules of the game has to touch the weapon hilt bullshit. But that's not as, you know, I mean, there are things we could go into on the gauntlets, but the gauntlets are sort of not the eye-catching thing.
Finger scales.
Hmm?
Straight finger scales.
What about them?
There no curve.
Oh, no curve?
That's
Yeah, I've only
cheese
just
square.
sort of come to understand that they really do have to have more curve than I've been giving them, and of those ones that Wasson made, yeah, those look nice. So, yeah, I'm guilty. I've been making my finger scales too flat.
Too thick.
Hmm?
If you make them too thick, they don't.
Yeah. Right. If you, yeah, it looks like like roof tiles in Italy as opposed to yeah. The fabric components. This comes back to what the fellow back there said. Sorry, I don't even know your name. I'm sorry.
Steve.
Steve. That's what Steve said. About the arming garments being too thick. You know, we have to start with a thinner arming garment, whatever it takes. You know, we just have to like look and say, no, I'm not going to buy that arming garment with no waist and, you know, all that bulk. I mean, the one size fits most arming doublet. Oh, it's the Charles de Blois arming doublet. Well, first of all, it's too heavy. Second of all, the average off-the-shelf one, or even some of the custom ones, the waist isn't really pulled in as tightly as it should be. You can't have a tightly fitted cuirass if you have inches of padded fabric you have to deal with. You know, that garment has to begin by shaping your body so the armor will just fit on over it without much fuss. Ventail linings. I think Ventail, you know, camel linings, I think those are great, you know. I think it's great that we're doing that, but why do we see so many of them that stick out past the mail? What's with that? You know, real Ventail linings, we don't see them very much in art because they don't stick out past the mail. The only time we see them is if the mail is turned back. And you look, for example, on the Edward of Woodstock, you know, Black Prince effigy, and you can see that you can see the artist has shown thickness under the mail, and the last rings of mail come down. You know, it is that the padding in the Ventail is smaller than the mail, and it has to, you know, the rings have to come in a little bit to
fall
meet
off
it.
the shelf. Essentially.
Yeah.
Would they have been sewn along that?
Yeah, it absolutely gets sewn down. Yeah, it has to be sewn down. But this is one of the new mistakes. This is only like 5 years old, I think, to see like all this quilted fabric sticking out past the mail. The last item I have on here is inappropriate decoration. I don't want to say words like gilding a turd, but you know, sometimes we see an armor which basically doesn't deserve any decoration, and they've lavished all this decoration on it. And pardon me?
Hashtag sticks and brass on it.
Yeah, stick some brass on it. You know, it's the
Glue some nickels on it.
glue some nickels on it. You know, it is the armoring equivalent of doing steampunk by gluing gears to your hat. You know?
Right. Yeah.
But there's plenty of armor out there that, you know, it's been made, this must be Sigismund of Tyrol's armor, exactly like it, because it has some brass borders and some flutes. Well, that armor didn't deserve any flutes. Yeah,
Can I interrupt with a question?
please.
I really enjoy looking at tomb effigies and trying to say, okay, that inspires me. I want to build a kit based on that. Walter von Hohenklegen is my current obsession.
Walter, yeah, he's a man.
How much can I trust tomb effigies, and have they been compared to extant pieces?
It varies.
It varies.
Yeah, it varies. I mean, the English stuff, it's hard to know. I mean, Toby wrote this big old book about saying they're more valid than we thought.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I didn't know he wrote a book about it. All right.
Oh, yeah,
I can find that book.
It's Toby's
Armor of the English Knight.
Armor of the English Knight, Volume 1.
Sorry, I didn't know that one.
Illustrations by Jeff Wasson and myself. Jeff's are better, because he's an artist.
Armor and the
Mine are
English
nerdy. They're nerdy
Volume
drawings.
2 when you do the drawings.
What's that?
So volume 2 when you do the drawings.
And Volume 2 will be out when I do the goddamn drawings. Yeah, I'm holding up the show. I'm holding up the show. But yeah, he talks about the idea that those effigies are a lot more valid than we thought. Are they perfectly valid? Probably not.
No.
But they are much more valid than we thought. And the part where English effigies are weirder than other effigies really means that English armor was weirder. You know, there was an English style, and it was different than what was being done in Germany, in Italy, in Flanders, closer to Flanders. Different than what was being done in Iberia, but kind of closer to Iberia than to some other places.
The English were separated from that armor by people who hated them.
Well, maybe, and they fought differently with it.
Right.
They like to fight on foot, and their armor reflects that. So we can trust some of it. Can we trust it all? We can't trust all of it. You know, the English effigies, for example, anybody's effigy, but the hands are in a praying position, which probably can't really be achieved in full armor.
Right,
the wrists are too small. There's frequently like too little room to get your head in and out of the helmet, and these are constraints about the medium to some extent, and they're constraints and they're also like the artist's interpretation. Because the artist was not doing photorealism. He was trying to make a thing that really looked like that guy, but it's filtered through his head.
Yeah.
It's it's coming out through his hands and his tools. So there's some he's done some interpretation. To some extent he's doing the same thing that we're doing. He's not doing the real thing. He's doing what he thinks the real thing is like, but we have to like second guess him.
Right.
And that's hard to do.
Yeah.
So
sometimes you have the armor and sometimes you don't.
Well, in the case of English armor, we don't. There's basically nothing that we know to be English. So interpreting those effigies is a walk on slippery rocks, but it's a walk we have to take.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So let's look at some pictures, and we'll see if we can point out the worst parts of it. Some of these are going to be armors that are disasters, and some of these are going to be armors that really aren't so bad, but there's just like one little damn. I have a web page or a Pinterest page called oh, and one more thing, with like the nice armor except one stupid thing that's wrong.
Columbo of armor.
Yeah. Oh, and one more thing. Well, it's been nice talking to you. Oh, but one more thing. Uh-oh. That should be a series of That's a little weird, but it's not like unbelievable.
Point straight back.
Yeah, what's this? The point below the horizon. You never see the point below the horizon. That's crazy. The point is there in part to initiate a watershed for descending blows. Why would it be below the horizon? Well, so you can do your special Anstioran scorpion snake move or some freaking thing, and your friends can't hit you. So this is a case where we've been following the leader and doing, and doing stuff that ain't right. But what I said about that axis of symmetry, the axis of symmetry should be from here to here. Also, this is like just too long down here, but it's a sports helmet and it's hidden under the mail. We'll give them a pass with that. But the overall shape of the helmet is disastrous. I think we got a little bit of distortion here. What do I have to do to actually change to the next picture? Do you think?
Arrow side.
Okay. Can I get you to just change pictures? Let's sit there.
Okay,
that'd be great. Thank you.
Helmet maker after helmet maker I went to because I wanted
just
a
to
point
to the next
that
one.
would come straight off the back,
Yeah.
unlike this one, and I actually had to go to a custom helmet maker and pay a lot of money to get the helmet made the way I wanted it.
Yeah.
Horrible.
So what's wrong with this?
Everything.
The front of the thing rises up. Where
Yeah,
it's
Too high.
Yeah.
It's not deep enough.
What else do we see?
too high up on the neck.
Yeah, it's kind of high in his neck.
It's above the belly button line.
Okay, well the belly button, that's a false landmark though. But
Oh, fair. Okay.
yeah,
It's rising though. It's
That's
not
what I meant,
horizontal.
yeah.
Or
yeah.
diving.
And what's his decoration? I call it decoration. He's left hammer
can't
marks
see
on
it.
there to give it an oldie-timey look, right? As if this armor has been lived in, neglected, rusted, and cleaned 3 times over a period of 600 years.
Distressed.
It's distressed. What a wank! I mean, yeah, people sometimes wore old armor, but they didn't wear hundreds of years of neglect old armor. It's like it's like the folks who do a piece of calligraphy on brown paper to make it look old.
Burn the edges a little lighter.
What about the bottom of the armpit there? It
Yeah,
looks like
it's kind of
diving
low, ain't
down.
it? It's kind of low. Yeah. So that's not so good. This is sitting on his clavicle.
Oh,
It's not
yeah.
going to be comfortable.
That's bad news.
Yeah. Let's look at the next one. Oh, we've seen this armor before. What's wrong with this armor? What do you? Backplate. Anybody else see it? Anybody else see what's wrong with this armor?
Yeah, I do now.
Go to the next one. I think we have the next one's a better picture that shows. Oh no, it isn't. Okay, I thought we had two of the same thing. Wait, maybe he's lit. Go back, please.
Right.
If we can go back.
Right.
Yeah. The back plate is flat and lifeless. I screwed up that back plate. I can't even look at this armor. I hate this armor now. I can't look at this armor.
The Indians do it.
It just kills me. Yeah, it's better than the Indians do. That's true. But it just kills me that the back plate is just so flat, and the breastplate is kind of lackluster. It's lame. It's pale. It's washed out. It's not dramatic. It doesn't have sprezzatura.
Can you define that other than
sprezzatura?
No, descriptive. I mean, can you actually point to it and say what is that?
This is just too flat.
Right, but the breastplate. I mean, that's actually.
It's really it's kind of shallow. Viewed from the front, it doesn't. The curve is kind of weak and unexciting in here. You know, from the waist to the armpits. It should come out more strongly and then rise a little more vertically. You know, I just wimped out. I just totally wimped out with the cuirass, especially the back plate.
Dr. Capwell?
Yeah, yes, that's Toby's black suit of great fame. Everyone loves it, but I can't look at it anymore.
But Matt,
Yeah,
to do that,
yeah.
would you have left more width at the upper or at the bottom part of the arm side, or would you have really tried to crank that into the center?
I would have brought it up more curved initially, and then let it rise vertically at the armpits to give it more of that sort of appleseed look, or that sort of light bulb look.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you'd have the same dimensions.
Yeah, same dimensions, same outer dimensions.
You'd have just changed your curve to get there.
And we'd have more depth in the back. He doesn't have enough shoulder blade. He sure doesn't have enough curvature back here. It's just too flat. I just wimped out. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating.
And you gilded it.
And I gilded it. Yeah, exactly. And then I went, no. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not. It's not of the level of. It ain't gilding a turd, but there's definitely a mistake in the back plate. You know. I mean, I'm not saying this armor sucks. I'm saying the back plate sucks. Much of the rest of the armor is good. You know, I like much of the rest of the armor, but I can't tear my eyes from the back plate.
Yeah.
You know, I can't tear my eyes from the anemic curve of the sides of the breastplate. It just kills me. So this fella, what do you see here?
On the clavicles.
The breastplate's wrong. It's too long.
I don't like the way the V-rib is too short.
Like, the V-rib are wrong.
It looks like
chainmail's wrong.
It looks like the armpit's diving in.
Yeah, well,
too narrow in the armpit.
The thing that strikes me sort of most strongly is it's just too narrow up here. That's sort of the worst of it. I mean, yeah, there's a couple other things, but the worst of it is that it's not bad armor altogether, but the breastplate just suffers from that too narrow thing, and it's a little high at the top. It may or may not be too high, but it's a little high. I'm not sure.
Was the stop correct?
It's correct enough. I don't, you know, it's correct enough for my taste. It's not cinching him in at all. It's not coming in at his waist. It's not sitting on his waist. It's just kind of lackluster. You know, he's you know, I mean, so why has he done this? What's happening here? What's his armor thinking?
It needs to hang from the shoulders for one.
You know, he thinks it needs to hang from the shoulders.
Did he do the thing where like the side plates slip underneath the middle plate?
I'm sure it's all on leather, but he certainly hasn't put in the sliding rivets here that the real one has, which I don't think I've ever seen anybody do correctly.
I tried it once. I still have.
Did you?
Yeah.
I got my Mark 1 like up in the truck somewhere, and it ain't right, but it's better than this, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it's sort of a shame because it's not a bad looking armor. He's actually got the arse girdle down near his arse. You know, I mean, the hip belt is down at that gangster level, and that's where it belongs. That's not so bad. I mean, frequently everybody cheats on that one. That's not so bad.
It also looks like his shoulder cup is hanging almost off of his shoulder.
Yeah, it's a little low.
Yeah, a little low.
For a cop which has that much depth.
Yeah.
You know, it's sitting on its edge,
like
sort of. If it were up higher, it would sit better, or if it was sitting there, but it was shallower, it would be better.
Or that's because his chainmail's not tailored right.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't have a mail shirt. He's got it tied to his doublet, or maybe he's even got it tied to one of those little vests. But it's pulling off his shoulders, and it's probably his shoulder armor is dragging the mail off his shoulders to some extent, or at least this shoulder. You know, this one looks better, but yeah, it's awfully deep. When he raises that arm, it's deeper than the anatomy by quite a bit.
No mail in his armpit, in his elbow pit.
Well, yeah. I mean, he should have mail there. I'm not going to fault him with that one because like there are other things, but yeah, that's a thing, and there's
with the forearm, everything is slid down 2 inches down, and you feel
It does look like it's falling off his arm, doesn't it? Yeah, it's sliding down too low.
It's running away.
Yeah.
Well, he's glistening, he probably just got done fighting.
Yeah.
It doesn't want to be associated with that breastplate.
So we better walk him before we feed him, lest he founder.
I'm not with this guy.
Oh.
Oh, Popeye.
Yeah, it's
There it
Popeye the
is.
Sailor Man. You know, whoa, is that out of control or what? I mean, it's like we get in our heads that these things have this shape, but one, we make the shape overboard. Two, we tend to use the same shape radially symmetrical around the arm, and it isn't. It's different in different places. Yeah.
Well, I brought up my question earlier pertaining to the following. What I observe in people who tend to do armor because they're hobbyists, they're not artists or armorers, really, the complete ignorance of the formal training in Western art. That is, the proper anatomy drawing, understanding
okay.
that Western armor developed off of the sculptural tradition that we inherited from the Greeks. The treatment of the femur, everything that was well understood. And in order to understand that point, we have to look at Islamic armor that is, the aesthetic is textile based. It's all flat and textured. But now if we think of Western armor again, it looks like a piece of sculpture and should be treated as that. And therefore we have to infer that the armorers, especially 15th century onward, were actually very well schooled in the artistic drawing tradition.
I mean, they may not have been formally schooled in it, but they were steeped in a culture of it. You know, you absorb your culture, you know, and that's what you see around you. Yeah, I don't think they have to have any formal training.
Well,
It's just
the only way you get the greave, especially the proper curve, is to have some formal education in drawing it, because that's why I asked about the correspondence. Leonardo da Vinci clearly corresponded with people like Negroli, because they share sketches for armor, the exact one-to-one sketching sharing. And my inference is it actually was happening earlier than Leonardo, and was happening more prolific.
Well, possibly. I mean, I tend to think of it more as just cultural immersion. You know, that you learn your craft from the people who teach you your craft, and how they got it, I'm not sure. But ultimately, the average armorer starting out, you know, he's not a well-educated guy, but he's been shown how to make the thing that he's supposed to make.
But remember, the study of anatomy was prohibited.
Right.
Except for very rare exceptions.
Right.
And we have to look at those exceptions to infer later on.
I mean, I think that we should study anatomy. You know, I'm all about the part where you know, the modern practitioner should know something about anatomy. You know, I don't know how much the medieval armorer knew about anatomy. He knew enough. He knew enough to you know, to make his product work. He knew what he could and could not do. But I think that since we don't have that already, we don't have it as part of our training. We need to supplement it by understanding something about anatomy.
I have something.
Yeah.
If you guys want to mix your drawing practice with anatomy lessons, there's a guy called Proco, and he's a fine artist, and he has free drawing human anatomy on YouTube.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just Proco, and his name's Stan Prokopenko is the artist, but Proco is his business and website, and he does
Can you spell it?
Proko. And it's the ones that you find online are really great. And then if you're super into it, shameless plug because the guy's awesome. He does have classes for sale, but you know, you can download, if you pay for it, you can download the app, and you can he has the whole human body 3D scanned in there, so you can play with bones and play with muscles and see where this tendon goes and see where this muscle group goes and how it develops. And he breaks it down into a very artistic way because his goal is to teach you how to draw the human body. But his anatomy and science is on point.
Cool.
So free or paid, whichever one you want.
Yeah, anatomy and drawing, both both important
two birds
to.
for one stone if you're practicing your sketchbook.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good to do that. We don't have to be obsessed about it, but we should delve into it. You know, we should do some. You know, I spent some time drawing from the figure, just like when I could, and I think it's useful. Drawing. Yeah, it's a Popeye vambrace, and as I say, it's It's radially symmetrical, and look, I mean, look at the proportions of it with respect to a real arm. I mean, this is sort of a real arm. Okay, it's not huge or anything, but what the hell?
It's too short.
It's short, and it's too big to fit over like all that gambeson and so forth. You know, why is it so bulgy here and then coming back in? You know, that's not a thing on
Dude has like a huge forearm and no bicep at all.
Yeah. Take it away from me. Take it away. There we go. Look at that.
Oh.
What's wrong with this one?
It's curved at the top.
Flat.
Hey, you don't get not the haircut. He doesn't have a beard. I'll give you that.
What's right about it?
Yeah, kind of.
Metal.
It's metal.
Yeah. I mean, same business. It's too curved this way.
Yeah.
It's too flat here.
Too long.
It's too long. I mean, like I say, the elbows are not a reliable landmark, but they're kind of a clue, and they're they're inches above where it should be. It's too slack. It's sitting way down. And it's a gilded turd. It's an etched and gilded turd. It's shiny. And it has etching. Etching. When was etching? Since when is etching appropriate to the turn of the 15th century? When did that happen? I'm looking at you, Brian Price. Next one, please.
Is that plastic?
Well, it is plastic, but that's not the part that bothers me.
The tandy leather buckles?
The tandy leather buckles and rivets, they bother me some. What do these holes do? What's with that? Why does he need those
You
holes?
can put your joint in it when it gets really small.
Possibly, yeah. And what's happening here? This is like completely ignoring anything about anatomy. Again, take it away from. That's a construction feature. Take it away. Take it away.
What about?
Yeah.
What about
Okay, so this is a question that I have.
Yeah.
What about edge finishing straps? Because I think that's a butt ugly strap, and it would be marginally less butt ugly if the edges were actually slicked and dressed.
That's true. I never paid much attention to the edge dressing. I know some people are into it. Some people think it just isn't a strap unless it's edge dressed. That doesn't bother me, but I do admit it would look better if it was. But it wouldn't fix this.
No.
Now that you pointed out, I really do like the inference. Like, what if this needs to go on a guy whose arms are 3 inches bigger? We need to put holes in it.
Holes way out there.
Right? Like,
But this is the thing. This is the thing we do all the time. We put these straps on. They're hugely long and punched with holes all the way. So what do we see here? What's going on here?
Skirt too tight.
Skirt's a little tight.
Too low.
The skirt?
Well, is it not the bottom edge of the brigandine? Is that not too low for his legs to move?
No. I mean, ask yourself, where's his butt? His crotch is here. We're good.
There are no keepers for the belts, so they're tucked in weird. Is that a thing?
Okay, so
all of these straps.
what's this? Why is all that length of strap down there? What's that doing? All that's doing is making it easier to misalign the parts. And he starts out here with them closer together, still too far apart, and then it just gets wider and wider and wider. And holes. He's never going to use those holes. He's never going to use those holes. They should all be the same length. They should all be close to the edges. And they're also kind of too wide. It's just like a kind of a travesty of straps.
and the profile of it just doesn't look right.
Well, it's supposed to be one of those mid-century weasel-waisted coats of plates, and that's laudable. I think that he's gotten that soft, sweepy waist in there. I'm all right with that. The thing I'm worried about is the treatment of the buckles. The next one, please. Oh, what's going on there?
He's got a helm for his tumor.
Yeah, well, okay, okay, he slung the helm on his back. Okay, I'm all right with that, but
It's huge.
it's huge, yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
for Richard III's hump?
What's that?
Is that for Richard III's hump?
Oh, I don't know. No, I think it's supposed to be like the Pembridge or something
that's
like
a
that.
nautical vessel.
Well, I don't know I don't care what helmet it's supposed to be, but it's
So the
huge.
under helmet is then
Hmm?
the bassinet is absolutely incorrect.
The bassinet is inappropriate. Now, as it happens, the bottom edge of this bassinet is in the right place. It's the right height. That's a good-looking bassinet worn correctly, but it has no business fitting under. It has no business under a helm like this, and it was a bad decision to have that helm built to fit over that helmet because it's clearly just immense. It looks like a bunker. You know, a cauldron. It's a cauldron. It's a, you know, it's part of a battleship.
It's almost spooky.
It must be really.
It's almost what?
Almost spooky.
Spooky. Yes,
Yeah.
it could be spooky. Next one, please. Oh, what's that? You see the Kerberg 13 appears a lot here.
Yeah.
What's going on? What do we see?
Breastplate's too high in front.
Ah, the rising waist. Yeah. It's probably a little low on the side, but it's crazy. You know,
I mean, he looks like he's leaning rakishly.
he's leaning a little bit, and that's the thing you'll see in art. You'll see St. George like doing this contrapposto thing and kind of leaning back, and that'll make his waistline level rather than dipping in the front.
Oh, okay.
You know, but this just looks bad. It swings up. It's nasty.
The tail is way too baggy around his face.
Yeah. Well, and what is this? You know.
Yeah, what is that?
I don't know. He's got some piece of leather there to control the front of the untailored piece of mail. What's happening up at his eyes?
Is it actually stitched?
Yeah, I think that's a
Oh, he's
piece of
got
leather.
sad
No,
bassinet
no,
eyes.
I mean above his brow.
He personally does, yes.
I mean-
And the reason he has sad bassinet eyes is because that thing is sitting on his eyebrows and making him squint.
Right.
No, the bassinet is a helmet which stops above the brow ridge.
Right.
When you see pictures of guys in bassinets, you always see their eyebrows with their visors open. And this is not just by accident. The bassinet is a very round helmet. It fits the forehead kind of closely because it doesn't have to come out enough to clear the brow ridge. It doesn't have to come out enough to begin to sort of set the pace for covering the nose like the armet does. You know, it can go very, very tight across the brow. And if you wear it too low, you either have to make it too big, or you know, the padding like sits on your eyebrows and it makes you squint. So this is a thing to guard against. That's probably the worst of it, really. Probably his skirt's too tight, but it's hard to tell. Oh, big bulky rivets holding the brass on. What's with that? I mean, this is another thank you, Brian Price, right? You know, brass is held on with flush rivets, so you can engrave, not etch, across the rivets. That's just the normal thing. You know, when you start putting big bulky rivets on there, it just doesn't look right. But we've seen it so much we don't even see it. It just goes under our radar. Next one, please. I'm so sad. Look at his eyes.
Oh,
They're treating the bassinet like the visor like a cone, and you've made the eyes be a distance from the point. That's not the way it should be.
Following an arc up the cone.
It's following an arc, but it shouldn't.
Yes.
You know, when the bassinet is in the wearing position, the eye slits should be pretty much horizontal. Not perfectly horizontal, but pretty much horizontal.
Only if you want to see out of him.
And it would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the greaves? I mean, obviously he's got stick legs.
He's got stick legs. You know, the greaves they're not the worst.
They wouldn't accentuate
We've got
that just to look better.
We got a skirt that's open in front, exposing his lower abdomen and groin.
Right.
What's with that? I mean, if anything's going to be covered with that skirt, it's going to be the stuff in the front. You know, there's no sense in having mail on your hips and not having mail on your groin, because you know you can sustain injury to your hips that would slay you if it was your lower abdomen or groin. Next one, please. Why have I got those here? I can't even remember now.
The Pauline's are a bit big.
Is it the sabotage?
Yeah.
You know, some of these we just like downloaded them from my page, and some of them.
Why are they different lengths?
The legs? Oh, that's camera distortion. That's just perspective.
Is it the green touching the
One's
round?
flat on
Oh, you know,
top,
this is one. This is one that Augusto put forth because he's on this Pinterest page with me. It seems to be one of his pet peeves that the so-called 14th century, and of course we're talking the long 14th century, which goes to 1420. Those greaves should really stop here. Yeah, I'd forgotten why he put that on there, but yeah, it's the long greaves. They're 15th century. They're mid to late 15th century greaves on what is called a 14th century armor, but is really an early 15th century armor. Yeah, that's the only thing that's really wrong. They're not so bad, but the greaves do sort of, once you look at it, oh yeah, the greaves. He's got the damn two late greaves. You know, there are worse things, but it is ubiquitous. We all make our damn greaves too long for that period. Next one, please. What's wrong with this fellow? It's the rising waist. It's the curse of the rising waist, and he's not a skinny guy, and that makes it worse. It just makes him look bad, and there's no reason he has to look bad, but his armor has made him look bad, and he's paid him for that. Yeah, it's the rising waist. We've also got some weirdness going on up here, but that's not. The important thing is the rising waist. This waistline should at a minimum be level, and it should really be dipping down below horizontal. So it's it's quite a distance too high. Also, we see his arming doublet sticking out. Oh, and also his brace. Why do we see his fucking junk? What is with this? You know?
What are you protecting here?
Yeah, well, I mean, the waist is rising up, the skirts are sticking out too far as a consequence, and his arming garment sticks down too much. He doesn't have the mail, he doesn't have anything covering his groin, and we can see his underwear. We can tell these are his brays because there's the knot that ties them at the waist. Why do we see his brays? Now, I don't know for a fact that his brays are like absolutely the wrong brays, but I guarantee you that what he's wearing is probably like 100 years too early for this armor, because everybody does that. They wear these baggy drawers that great grandpa, they wear like the drawers out of the Machevsky Bible, but these are 13th century drawers. They got over them by the end. Yeah.
I have a question, and it's in your practice, how do you deal with what I call the McDonald's phenomenon? That is, armor takes a while to produce.
Yeah.
And by the time you produce it, the measurements you've taken, the person has set the McDonald's too long.
Unfortunately, I deal very badly with it, and it has burned me quite recently, when for reasons only partially within my control, an armor took altogether too long, and the guy got fatter in between, and I had to fix it. So I deal badly with it. I don't have a good way to deal with it. I wish I did.
Of an armourer, which in his contract when you order from him, he takes your weight measurement. he puts his customers on the scales. So if there's an increase and the armour doesn't fit because of it, then it's not down to him.
I take casts, and before I heat treat the armor, I usually send out the armor unheat treated for sharpening marks. But if there's a problem again, because polishing takes a while, and all armor is a little bit slackers.
I'm a slacker.
There you go. And it's our fault.
I'm the prince of slackers.
I don't know how to deal with the situation where I have to be an asshole to the customer, just send the cast I took of him back. But this is the cast, this is what gave me. But is there a way of dealing with it?
I don't know. I wish there was. I tend to just suck it up, I'm afraid, but that's why I'm poor. I'm not a good businessman.
Or nail it down in the contract.
Yeah, I mean, he really does have the answer, I think, and it is that you make him sign a thing that says, I am not going to gain more than this much weight.
Yeah, I have a verbal shape thing, no McDonald's insurance. That's why armor is the worst thing, and most of the thing I make now is swords. And I started out as an armor.
Yeah, nobody gets too fat for the sword. Yeah, no, you got it under control there.
When I was a youngster and I was taking Taekwondo in one of those strip mall Taekwondo places, the place that I went to and I eventually worked for a summer had an educational platforming company that handled their whole financial spectrum. You didn't pay them. The guy with the black belt didn't chase you down. This company EFC did. Maybe it's people who want to be professional. Maybe you should offload. Put 20% markup on your prices and offload to some company that platforms and does the financial handlings, and you don't have to deal with that liability. You get paid.
No, I don't want to involve additional parties. Yeah. It just seems like, they would be getting a slice of my all too thin pie.
Comes after you, right?
Yeah.
Also, just to give you a brief idea of how dramatic it can be, I went from 185 to 170, went back to Tracy to get remeasured, and I went from a 38 waist to a 34 waist.
Yeah, that makes a big difference.
That's 4-inch difference is enough to screw your arm.
I've had guys hit the gym and bulk up
and pump up. Yeah.
And suddenly the breastplate fall off.
Luckily, I don't. Those aren't my customers. My customers get fat.
They're also not the ones who want to argue.
Yeah. By the time they can afford my work, they're no longer slim guys, and the problem is they get fatter.
I think the sad answer is grow a business sense.
Yeah, I should grow a business sense. You're absolutely right. Yeah,
very common among armorers.
I know it. As businessmen go, I'm a pretty good armorer. Yeah. So what's wrong with this fella?
Shouldn't the black belt be lower?
Yeah, shouldn't it though?
Really
Yeah.
shouldn't be there.
I mean, that thing is called an arse girdle. There's a reason for this. It should sit on his arse.
I didn't research this, but I had a thought that maybe that thing was supposed to like keep the armor closer to your legs so that thing can't shove stuff on there. Is that what the purpose of the girdle?
I think it's supposed to look marvelous.
Oh, okay, just pretty.
You know, that's it. It's supposed to look good, and it's a kind of a short-lived fashion in most places that aren't England. You know, it was around for a couple decades, and then they got over it. But it looks marvelous.
I've seen a bunch of unsuccessful versions of these things.
Yeah, we all
when I
have.
was looking at it, I was wondering, I was trying to think like an engineer mindset. I was like, you know, how there's a top circle and a bottom circle to a flat belt. Like, should one be shorter than the other to taper it?
I think not. I think.
Oh no.
I mean, they just there's right just above the great trochanter is the last place on the human body where a belt will stay, and that's. You know, and that's where the guy, you know, the hipsters with the studded belts and the gangsters with the low pants mostly cinch things in.
Right.
That's just the last place it'll stay, and that's where that belt is supposed to be. But you know, we fail to put it there because it's hard to keep it there. In part because it's got to be really tight, and you got to be after it all the time, just like the guys whose pants are falling down all the time are after their pants all the time.
Crap version of one, and I have to be after it all the time.
Yeah. I think that's just part and parcel, and that's why it wasn't a long thing. What else is wrong with this guy?
The lace.
We can see his underwear.
You can see his underwear. Why can you see this man's underwear? What were you saying?
The lace on the inner forearm, there's no buckles. It's laced on.
Yeah, it's laced on. That's just weird.
No voiders.
But in that case, it's because that armor is a sports armor.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's because it's a sports armor.
Because that guy is HMB fighter, actually.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, he's a part of your tribe, you recognize him?
Yeah, that's
okay.
Henry, the captain of Austria.
Yeah, okay.
So that armor is a...
Well, when you see him, tell him we don't want to see his underwear.
Yeah, I know.
Tell him you can read him with no sword.
Tell him his picture's been shown in front of many people when we've laughed at his junk.
I know. But that armor is specifically sport armor.
It's not a bad looking armor, except, you know, I mean, it's not the armor I would make, but it's not a bad looking armor, but you look at the, you know, I mean, we see his army garment here, we see his underwear here, his belt's too high, you know.
What about the Visby coat of plates?
Well, I don't think it's a Visby exactly, because it's longer than Visby. You know, I'm not sure what he's done, but, you know, I'm willing to give him that.
It's a barrel shape with a black belt.
Yeah, it doesn't have much waist. But, you know, it's a good long length down to his hip, which, you know, I'm all right with that. But the underwear and the belt, you know,
That's what it is. Something about
the lining on the poultry.
Who's looking at me?
Oh, you know, that doesn't bother me. I mean, it may not be right, but it's not one of the biggies.
He's looking through the crust.
Oh, this is one that Augusto put in.
Where's that person's eyes?
Down here, I think.
Are they really?
I don't know. I have no idea. Yeah, where's his eye?
Okay, this is a perfect armor for a space alien.
It's a space alien armor. And also, you know, we got a very heavy doublet under there. And the waist is just, you know, it's just not coming in like it should. You know, it's you know, I cry for the lost opportunities. Why the hell didn't he just make the waist tighter? Oh, and what the hell's that thing on his head? You know, I don't even know. You know,
I kind of love it.
Do you?
I mean, just as a piece of thing.
I mean, it has a kind of a 19th century collectors will adore this look.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a stamp with the upside airplane on it, you know? It's
Yeah. So, what's wrong here?
Aventail.
Yeah, the Aventail. I think this is Augusto himself, isn't it? Anybody recognize whether that's Augusto? But he put that in. I think it might be him. I'm not good with faces, but yeah, the Ventail, it's long and it's hanging in all these folds because it's symmetrically tailored.
The rings are huge too.
Yeah, the rings are huge, but you know, hey, it's a product of India. What can you do? But the important thing is there's too much fabric here, and because there's too much fabric, one, bunches up. Two, it hangs long because that's what mail does, right?
Right.
You know, it robs Peter to pay Paul.